Felipe Cárdenas. I'm a senior writer at The Athletic.
Cool. So, how would you say this World Cup is being anticipated by Colombia fans?
It's such an interesting question when you ask a Colombian about their expectations for the national team. I think what's funny is that most Colombians, I would say, think that this is a good team. This is a team that finished, third in World Cup qualifying. Obviously, they had a bumpy road, but in the end, they made up for a lot of drop points and they finished third. This is the same team that was in the final of the 2024 Copa America, narrowly losing to Argentina in that final in Miami. And so the team is the country is very familiar with this team. There aren't a lot of surprises, and there is a feeling that hey, this is a good Colombia team. Like they're strong in the middle. They have a strong spine. They've got Luis Diaz, who, one of the best wingers in the world, who's in great form. I think the problem is then the psyche of a Colombia when you start hearing that they're a dark horse contender and that so and so former player thinks that they could win it. It immediately takes them back to '94 when Colombia was a favorite to win that World Cup. Again, Colombia has never been a favorite to win anything. And so when Pele comes out in '94 and says they should win the World Cup, it's just there's a lot of bad memories. So I think there's excitement and there's a little bit of let's pump the brakes and go game by game.
Cool. So, I've been asking people to play TV doctor for me and kind of diagnose the condition of the nation that we're talking about, football. So, what would you say is the overall condition of Colombian football at the moment? And I mean that in a domestic sense and the ability to export players. Would you say it's overall healthy or not healthy?
I think the Colombian first division product is not healthy right now. However, the development of players and to your point, how many Colombian players are still being exported to Europe and throughout South America, healthy. So is the Colombian league on its deathbed? No, but there's a slump right now. I think the quality is not there. It's not there the way it used to be. A lot of the Colombian national team, like almost all of them, play in Europe. That was not the way it was in the '90s and the '80s and '90s, and then the early 2000s. There was a bit of a lull between a mixture of European players and home-based players. And then when Colombian teams go to the Copa Libertadores or the Sudamericana, they're not performing well at all. And so I think that gives probably the Colombian league a C- grade right now. However, there are a lot of players around Europe. There are a lot of young players leaving Colombia early and finishing their professional development at a young age as teenagers in Europe. The tall, physical ball playing center back is very much like a Colombian product. Like that, you see those types of players all over the world. Can you produce a Luis Diaz every 10 years? Maybe not. Maybe he is a generational player. And there's James Rodriguez, who people forget was a pro at 15. So there, the talent's there. I think they're really respected from a technical standpoint in South America. But I think overall, it's not the healthiest picture when you look at Colombian football.
Can you give me a sense of where the talent in Colombia comes from? Does it come from rural areas? Does it come from the cities? Does it come from all over? Does it come from the coast? Does it come from where do people play football?
I would say it comes from all over. I mean, there are regions in Colombia that are obviously heavy, the African descendants of certain regions like Choco. There's a region in Colombia called Choco that so many great players, professionals, and that players that have become national team players come from there. The coast, you mentioned the coast, there's a very specific way of playing, and there's a flavor of Colombian football on the coast. That's where the national team plays in Barranquilla. That's where Carlos Valderrama was born and raised, and where he really became famous. Luis Diaz is considered one of those players from the coast. So I think it depends. It depends on the type of player you want. Like I mentioned, the center backs, those players are coming out of Medellin. A lot of creative players are coming out of different cities. The number 10 is still a player that Colombia produces often as well.
Cool. So let's talk about qualification. South American qualification is always such a gruel. How did they do in qualification? and maybe how have they been since? I know they played Croatia and France, and it didn't go too hot, so maybe I'll lump those together.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think still up until this qualifying cycle, Como Bowl was considered the most grueling and competitive World Cup qualifying campaign in the world. The fact that now six teams got in as automatic qualifiers and the seventh went to the playoff, I mean, that was really not controversial, but it did change, I think, the perspective of World Cup qualifying. Now, as a Colombian and as a journalist and someone who really still followed every single game, the games were still very cutthroat. It didn't feel like the field had been expanded at all times throughout qualifying in South America. It was very tight. Yes, Argentina, I think had maybe like an 11-point lead over a lot of the teams that were second, third, fourth, and fifth. But Argentina lost some games. Argentina had to go and not fight for qualification, obviously, but they didn't walk through it either. And obviously Brazil struggled a little bit. And then we talked about Colombia. It was like one of the better teams and had their moments too. So I think the qualifying is still tough. You still have countries like Venezuela that have never been to a World Cup and that were like so close to getting there this time. And obviously it's just not easy for any team in South America to just simply qualify and perform.
So the losses to Croatia and to France are does that have people worried, or is it just they're friendlies? It is what it is.
No, I think the overall sentiment was like, well, okay, let's lose now, and honestly, like the games against like Croatia, I thought Colombia should have won that game. Croatia, though, very good. I think they're very impressive. If anyone thinks that Croatia is just like this old team that's boring and not a contender, they're wrong. Like I watched that game very closely, and yes, they have some veteran players, but Croatia's still able to just ping the ball whenever they want out of pressure. But Colombia had their chances. Luis Suarez, the Colombian Luis Suarez had missed a sitter that I think would have changed the game for Colombia. And then against France, the overall takeaway in Colombia was, all right, like we're not at France's level. That was, I don't know, I guess considered a second team for France. That game ends 3-1. And even though Colombia, I think, matches up well with a team like France physically and at times even technically, the sheer skill and the depth of a France it just like it let everyone in Colombia know like, okay, maybe we have been on a roll and we're starting to move into that second, third tier in South America more consistently. But to face a team like France, we've got a long way to go. So I think the overall sentiment was like, we didn't embarrass ourselves. It's better to lose now. And it's also a good thing to play those types of teams right now instead of not playing friendlies or playing friendlies that you're expected to win.
Yeah. Who's the coach? Are fans happy with him? And what style of play should we expect?
Nestor Lorenzo is the manager. He's a longtime assistant. He's Argentine. He's an Argentine, but he was an assistant under Jose Pekerman, who took Colombia to 2014 and 2018 World Cups. So Nestor Lorenzo has been around the Colombian national team for several World Cup cycles now. This is his first go as a head coach. Obviously, for a senior side at the national team level, he had just recently, before he was hired, he was coaching in Peru as well. So relatively new to like being the man, I think, Nestor Lorenzo. But man, when they went on like a 27 game stretch without losing, and then that took I think the first loss in that stretch was losing the final of the 2024 Copa America. Nestor Lorenzo was like, he was nearing honorary citizen type of status, and that's something that Pekerman earned after a wonderful World Cup in 2014. And then things started to get shaky during World Cup qualifying. I think the one of the main, something that Nestor Lorenzo is constantly defending is he too married to his starting 11? Is he too married to 13 or 14 players? Doesn't really open up the national team to new players. That's something. And then obviously when they went 3 games in a row in qualifying and they were a little bit shaky, his job was on the line in Colombia. Like, I personally did not think they would make that move. And the federation president just kept saying, he's our guy through the World Cup. He's our guy. But it got to that point. And so now he has a lot of, I wouldn't say detractors, but people are iffy. Like, can Nestor Lorenzo really take a good team into a major tournament that's not a South American friendly tournament like the Copa America and get results. So how does he play? I think he's a typically like a 4-2-3-1 guy. Like he likes the number 10. He likes two defensive midfielders at times. He likes his fullbacks to be in the attack. But this team, and when I talked to James Rodriguez in February, he told me like we can play in a lot of different ways. That's like the strength of the Colombian team. If they just concede possession, they're a team that feels comfortable playing that way and then countering with players like Luis Suarez and Luis Diaz. So I think he's adapted. He adapts his tactics depending on the opponent.
Let's talk about Luis Diaz. 29 years old, but a World Cup debut in a few months, provided health. What do you think his development has been in Liverpool at Bayern Munich that's helped him develop into what we've seen this season?
Yeah, first of all, I can't believe he's 29. I always have to like double check. Like there are players like that. There are athletes like that their number doesn't match what they're giving physically. I think he's one of those guys. He's like a young 29-year-old. And perhaps he just has that physiology where he's really healthy a lot of the times. He can go for a long time in terms of like endurance, stamina, many games, many terms, doesn't get hurt. But he is now, I think, the first player since Radamel Falcao, when he was probably one of the best strikers in the world, 2013, 2014, before his knee injury that knocked him out of that World Cup in 2014. Like Radamel Falcao was like a Ballon d'Or type player. Like he was in the conversation, and that's really rare for Colombia. And I think Luis Diaz, since going to Bayern Munich, like that's the corner that he turned. Like everyone knew he was good at Porto, and then what he did at Liverpool. Bayern Munich, I think, was like I think he silenced a lot of people. People are like, well, why are you leaving the Premier League? You're going to go. The competition's not as good. But he has just hit the ground running. I think he's become a complete player. He can play in either flank. He's really smart in terms of tactics. I think that's he's underrated in that regard. And the one thing that has changed, I think, since he left for Porto and now where he is today before his first World Cup, he's considered not a leader, like a silent leader of the national team. If James Rodriguez is not on the field, I think Luis Diaz is 100% wearing the captain's armband. And that is something that in Colombia they're talking about. Like, look, this kid, the skinny kid that comes from the coast that no one really knew about. And now against France, to your point, he was the one that was in players' ears saying, hey, like we can play with these guys, like, be technically sound. Like he was a leader on the field. So I think that's something that Colombian fans have liked to see from Luis Diaz as well.
So when you look at this Colombian squad, there's so many veterans in it. Mm-hmm. And at the high end, you have Ospina and obviously James. And then there's like guys like Mosquera, who are like the youngest player in the team, or one of, but he's like 25. So this generation of players is really like, because I've been asking people who are the young players to look out for, but this team is not young. So what are the pluses? What are the minuses of having such a veteran group?
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. I call this team, and something I wrote recently for The Athletic, this is a band of brothers. Like this Colombia team, they've been through a lot together. Some of them, very, very few now, but some of them, you mentioned David Ospina, Jerry Mina, they were on the 2018 World Cup team that went to Russia and lost to England in the penalty shootout in the knockout round. They miss out on 2022, and now a lot of these guys are together again. This is the same team that I mentioned before goes to the Copa America final, and so this is a group of players that they are veteran, and the spine of this team is very much like Jefferson Lerma. I think you remove him from that team, and it's not the same team. He's a guy now is completely ingrained in Premier League football. Danny Munoz now also a Crystal Palace player, one of the best right backs in the Prem, and a lot of people think he's the best right back in South America. Several young center backs, but they both left-footed, right-footed, and you mentioned who are the young players. Like I think Jorge Carrascal, the Flamengo number 10, is a guy that is a change of pace playmaker. So they have those guys, but you're right. It's a team that just knows each other really well, and that is the strength. Now, what is what's a minus, or I guess a negative of a veteran team? Well, it's what I mentioned before. Is Nestor Lorenzo relying a little bit too much on the core team of players? Is he going to take a guy like James Rodriguez, who's played less than 200 minutes of MLS football since going to Minnesota United, and are they going to build this team around him during the World Cup? When is it going to be Luis Diaz's team, et cetera, et cetera? So it is a tight knit group, and it's one that has seen a lot together. Now it's like this is the final exam this summer.
You know what? Okay, let's do expectations. Let's go here. So floor and ceiling. So what do you think the floor is for this team? What do you think the ceiling is? And is there pressure to succeed? However, pressure is defined. Let's go there.
Uh, I think the bare minimum is with this group. Like I said, everything we've said. A team that can play against anyone in South America, a team that physically I think matches up with really well with any team in the world. I mean, honestly, physically, Colombia can do it. Technically, I think they can do that as well. So that being said, like this is a team that the bare minimum in Colombia, looking at this team, is like it's a quarterfinal berth. Like that's where the 2014 team went. And they changed history in Colombian football. And this is a group that wants to continue to do that, to prove that at a major tournament in front of the world, Colombia can be among the elites. Now that doesn't a quarterfinal is not among the elites. I think you need to be in a semifinal in order to do that. But here's the reality. Yes, it is a expanded field. You can be potentially you can be bad in the group stage and still advance. And if you look at Colombia's group with Portugal, Uzbekistan, and DR Congo, if Colombia doesn't win the group, like their path to a potential semifinal or potential quarterfinal, it's really difficult. Like that's why that Portugal Colombia game is going to be so huge, because the second place team is going to run into Spain, Croatia, England like right away. And so some like guys in Colombia are like, it's almost better if we just finish third. It's either first or third. But if this Colombia team is crawling out of the group in third place, like things have gone wrong. So no one expects this team to fail. That I don't think getting grouped or anything like that is going to happen. Like, can they push the envelope and be in the conversation in July?
All right. So we got Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay. Those are often called like the South American big three, if you will. What are I don't know, is it development? Is it organizational? Is it cultural, historical? Like, what are the elements that stop Colombia from being or like sitting at that table with those guys? Like, have you thought about that question at all?
Oh yeah. It's a question that Colombians answer often. It's mentality. I think that's what hurts the most, that you look at from a technical standpoint, and Colombia still produces some of the best players in the world. In Argentina, a place where so many great Colombians have gone and become heroes in Colombia. Like most recently, like right now, Juan Fernando Quintero, the number 10 for River Plate, they would build a statue for him. Honestly, like that's how important he has been. Obviously, in the early 2000s, the Colombians that were at Boca Juniors and won 3 straight, I think, Copa Libertadores, like they became icons, and people were like, these guys are so good. Like they produce every type of player. Why can't they put it together? And it goes back to mentality, goes back to not being used to being in a position where you're expected to beat the best teams all the time. The inconsistencies of World Cup qualification, missing out in 2022 is a massive blow for this type of question you're asking me. Like, how can a team like Colombia in 2022 not be at that World Cup? At least be part of the field. And so, Colombia, I think they are at the table, right now. And I think it's because Brazil has been so down of late, and Argentina has been just completely running away with everything. Argentina 2022, arguably the best national team of all time. You could argue that, like back-to-back Copa Americas, World Cup final, incredible. And now everything is so even in South America that a team like Colombia, has an opportunity to get in and stay in that top 3, even above or battling with a team like Uruguay that has more like international aura, honestly, than Colombia. Like when you see Colombia, like, oh, fun team, great crowd, some flair. And then, but when you talk about Uruguay, you're like, watch out, like these guys, they've won a World Cup.
Bro, I was surprised when I was looking at Colombia. It's like only one Copa America.
Yes, and it was at home.
It's crazy.
It was at home. And
Yeah.
there's a huge asterisk next to it. The 2001 Copa America was played in Colombia. Argentina didn't even show up.
Wow.
Like Marcel Bielsa's like, no, like there's a lot of narco violence at the time, political unrest, and so Bielsa's team didn't show up. Brazil sent literally like a D team. Honduras had to be invited at the last minute, and so Colombia beats Mexico in the final. So it's like there's a huge asterisk. Like that's the thing. Colombia needs dominoes around them to fall in order for them to be part of that conversation. But they're close and they should be there.
So I remember I was coming from college once, and I was on the bus, and I struck up a conversation with a guy from Baltimore, and he was like, "I hate The Wire because of how it portrays us." And I thought that was kind of interesting because everybody I was with was like, "Nah, The Wire is one of the greatest shows on TV." Da da da. And I thought of that when I formed this question of the two Escobars, the documentary. I love that documentary. It's very good, very well made. One of the ESPN 30 for 30s. And talking to someone from Colombia, I wanted like, is there something about that you're just like, nah, because it paints us in a bad color. But and the question was going. Obviously, this is 32 years after 1994 when the World Cup was last in the United States and the whole Andres Escobar stuff. So I wonder if there's any echoes of that are permeating Colombian football discussion.
I mean, there was a moment before the World Cup draw in December where I asked like my close friends and colleagues, I was like, man, Colombia is going to be in the same group as the US and they're going to play in Los Angeles and it's going to be terrible for Colombians. It's going to be reliving the 94 World Cup. Trust me, during the draw, I was like, just don't put us in the same group as the US, please. No Colombian needs that. It needs to be reminded. I think Colombia's in terms of like the analogy with The Wire. First of all, I think The Wire is the best show on ever made. And I have family in Baltimore. My brother was born in Baltimore.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. But I think Colombians would probably say that more with like Narcos, for instance. Like,
Yeah.
even though it's like built around true stories, you're like, no, Colombians aren't proud to see that. But there are a lot of realities that Colombians like have to face, and the tragedy of Andres Escobar in '94 was a wake up call that like at the time, the mob and the mafia and narco terrorism was part of Colombian football. It's been not 100% stamped out, but it's not really what defines Colombian football anymore. But it's still a country that is used to unrest and violence, honestly. And the national team continues to be like this moment of hope that when all these things are happening, Colombians like look to the senior men's national team as like, get us out of this rut. Let us think about something else. Let us show the world like who we really are. And I think that's the pressure, kind of like you talk about pressure, that's the pressure that's on this national team all the time when they play. And I think this group knows it. James Rodriguez has talked about that. They don't shy away from that. They don't want to be in third place or second place. Like they want to be a top team in the world, and they're willing to take on what comes with it, with people wondering, is it really that violent in Colombia? It's just something, it's like a burden that Colombians, and especially Colombian footballers, carry with them even in 2026.
Two more questions. Who do you think is going to win the World Cup, Felipe?
I mean, I think it's France. It's so hard for me to not say France. And listen, I watched that game against Colombia closely, and I was like, man, like this team, they just can do whatever they want. Meaning the depth is just crazy. And I think if they're in a game where like their elimination or their World Cup is on the line, I think they have a stomach and a steely attitude about them, despite their youth and their flair, that I think they can beat teams in high pressure moments. So that's France. My hot take though is that Brazil will not win the World Cup, but they'll go further than Argentina. That's what I think. Yeah.
All right. Last question. Is there anything I haven't asked about Colombia, Colombian football culture, the national team that you find particularly fun or interesting that you think people should know or might want to know?
I think this notion of like the sea of yellow when Colombia plays, soccer, football kits are such a big thing around the world, and it's considered streetwear. In Colombia, it's like, it's not fashion. It's pride. It's honestly pride. It is like you buy a World Cup kit not to rock it with Converse and maybe like put denim over it. No, like you wear it because it's like your second skin. And when Colombia plays, the entire country is aware of it. Like I'm not going to say that everything stops, but it comes pretty close. And everyone wears their jerseys and everyone wears it to stadiums because it's like that's how close they feel to the national team. And when the anthem sounds in different stadiums around the world, and you're going to see it during the World Cup, that sea of yellow, I think, is this traveling band of supporters is very much part of the Colombian football identity, especially at major tournaments. So when I buy a Colombia kit, like I have several, and they have different weights of importance to me. Like the 2014 one, it's in my closet, and like I wear that on special occasions. Like that team made me so happy. There's one that like I don't like because they didn't play well in it. And so now the new one, I bought the new one, and I'm like, please, like, give me something positive to remember you by. So the kit, the Colombian yellow kit, remember that when you're watching games this summer.
Cool. Where can people find you, bro?
Find me on Twitter at Felipe Carr. And then on Instagram, Felipe_Cardenas_SCCR. And that's where I put a lot of my work. That's where I do a lot of discussions with fans and supporters. So yeah, look me up.
All the links will be in the description. This has been really good, Felipe. Thank you for taking the time, bro.
Anytime. Thank you.
My name is Connor, and the only real outlet I have is Twitter, so it's @_Uzbek football.
Cool. How's this World Cup being anticipated by Uzbekistan fans?
Fairly big. It's obviously the first time ever qualifying, so it's one of those things where there's a lot of anticipation. There's not as much expectation in terms of they're in quite a difficult group, but it's a case of it's excitement. It's kind of going into the unknown and not really knowing what to expect, but excited nonetheless.
You know what? I've buried the lead, and I know this was on the list, so I'm very sorry. Why are you into Uzbekistan football? Like, what was the impetus that got you into this particular niche country? It seems.
It's kind of one of those things where there's like a random transfer link, and then you kind of follow a player, and then you follow like a rabbit down a rabbit hole, and then you meet kind of just everything related to it. I kind of enjoy the fact that it's kind of to a degree disconnected from the Premier League and from the Champions League. So there's similar to people who potentially follow like non-league football in England. There's a degree of just being able to enjoy it for football rather than having the level of potentially dramatics that you can get in particularly Premier League football. If a team loses 2 games, it's sounding the alarms and sack the manager. I get to kind of take myself out of that and just enjoy football for the actual sport itself.
I like that. Back on track. How's this being covered by Uzbek media? Do you find any difference between maybe? I'm tending to find fans very excited for the World Cup. Bring it on. When we talk to people who are journalists and media, there's this bit of like trepidation, like, hey, like let's ease the brakes a bit. Does that exist?
Within sort of Uzbek media, it's more similar to fans because it's new for them. It's being able to sort of partake in events and cover the tournament as a participating nation is different than obviously as a spectator from the outside. So there's a degree of getting to do things for the first time. So it's exciting for every aspect of the country: fans, media, industries, the political side of things. Everything's new and everything's kind of global. So it's just exciting all around.
For those of us who aren't initiated with it as much, how would you describe Uzbekistan's football culture? Like, what does that look like?
It's very, I don't say niche. It's probably quite similar to potentially maybe Germany in a way, in terms of the more well-supported, passionate fans probably are not within the capital city. So you've got sort of the regional cities where you get the most passionate fans and you get more of a kind of ultra atmosphere in some of their venues, where some of the more the capital clubs in particular, their stadiums tend to be less atmospheric, more sparsely attended than you do in sort of the Fergana Valley part of Uzbekistan, where that's where kind of the passion is within the country.
How would you rank it in like the country's sporting interest? Is there like a boxing thing? Is there an MMA thing? Is there a what is it the number one sport? Would you say?
I believe it is the number one sport, but it's probably, but I think boxing and, as you mentioned, martial arts, that sort of thing, is where they've been more successful in historically. But it is at least the most popular team sport by far. And I'd imagine with sort of obviously qualifying for the World Cup and some of the players getting to move to bigger clubs with higher profiles, I think football, if it's not already, it will be the most sport and most followed sport very shortly if it's not already.
So I've been asking people to kind of play TV doctor for me and diagnose the condition of the country that they covers football. Would you say Uzbekistan football relative to itself is in a healthy place or a not healthy place? And I mean that both domestically and its ability to export players abroad.
It's honestly, it's probably in the best position it's ever been. You have the level of professionalism in the leagues. The domestic league has expanded greatly in the past 5 years. You have clubs who previously went sort of bankrupt and disappeared 10, 15 years ago, been refounded and playing professional football again. The second tier went from 6 teams to 12 teams in the space of 1 year. And the stadiums, the quality of the stadium, the quality of the pitches, the training facilities, the coaches, the youth football, it's all improving year on year on year. Even things like marketing is improving, and how they promote themselves. When it comes to sort of exporting that outside of the country, that's still in the early days. A lot of Uzbek players traditionally went to Russia. That sort of died down for potentially obvious reasons. There's a couple that go to the Middle East, Iran, but we're starting to slowly see trickles into Western Europe. Obviously, they have a player in Man City. They have a couple of players in Turkey. One's in Belgium, and a couple of youth players are heading to Portugal in the coming weeks. So it's slowly trickling into being more European centric, where hopefully in a couple of years the majority of the first team squad for the national team will be Europe based. It's still heavily domestic, but it's heading in the right direction and is the best I would say it's ever been.
So would you say this is a team that could probably would be aiming at future World Cups? Like you would think to see them in 2030, 34, etc.
I'd be shocked if this is the final time that they're ever at the World Cup. With it being expanded to 48 teams, they are the fifth ranked best team in Asia currently. I think with the improvements in football within Uzbekistan and potentially the reduction in quality within Iran, I could see them at some point eventually overtaking Iran. But that'll be a couple of years away, I think. But that's very feasible. So I think even if you were to have the traditional 32 team World Cup, Uzbekistan would be either at that or would get very close to getting there. So they will be a consistent team going forward. So people should hopefully get used to seeing them around.
Cool. So let's get into qualification. How did Uzbekistan qualify?
With obviously the expanded World Cup qualification teams that were allotted to go from each confederation, they had two rounds of sort of group qualifying. They I think they played Iran in both, which was terrible. They played each other too much. But they finished second in the one that actually got them to the World Cup in a group of Iran, Qatar, UAE, Kyrgyzstan, North Korea. They did very well. They were qualified with like a game to spare. There was no real danger of them not getting to it. I think they only lost one game the entire qualification process, so it was fairly seamlessly. They did have an issue with their coach. The coach was a Slovenian coach. He came down with quite a serious illness and had to step down from his role prior to them qualifying. But they made it over the line regardless, and they then took on Fabio Cannavaro as the manager. So the qualification process was much easier than I expected, and thankfully for stress levels, no intercontinental playoffs or anything. It was
So what's been the form since qualification, and maybe describe for us, do you have a read on their kind of preparation heading into the World Cup?
I think since qualification, they have played, I think it's been about 7 or 8 games. They've lost 1, drawn 3, won 3. At least that's the record since Cannavaro's been in charge, and it's been kind of the same old in terms of they've not lost. I think they've lost 2 games since 2024. They tend to be quite pragmatic in their approach. So draws tend to be fairly common, but it's been quite consistent regardless of who the manager has been, and because the way they structure the team, it's fairly risk averse. So it's been positive, but it's not been groundbreaking.
So let's talk about Cannavaro. Perhaps is this the only Ballon d'Or winner that's going to be coaching at the World Cup?
Oh,
Wait a minute. I mean, obviously the next one should have Zidane, but either way, I don't even know why that can. Why is he the manager of Uzbekistan, and are fans pleased with him and his style of play?
I think he might be Ballon d'Or winning player, but I think as a coach, he's had kind of a very up and down coaching career in China and Croatia, and a brief period in Italy, I think. And when Uzbekistan qualified, they had an interim coach who was an Uzbek coach, but it was clear that they wanted someone with a bit of a higher profile. So he was hired. Initially, it was kind of underwhelming to a degree, because he hadn't done much as an actual manager and had little experience as an actual national team manager. It was kind of underwhelming. But to his credit, since he's taken over the job, he's been very, very passionate and very, very sensible in his approach. He tends to spend a lot of time in Uzbekistan, stayed in Uzbekistan during the season, so he can attend domestic games and regularly watch domestic-based players. He visits the players who play abroad fairly often, and he continues to have like training camps where it's sort of players who are maybe on the fringes get invited to squads, so he can keep up to date with players who are coming in. He's taken quite as I mentioned, pragmatic approach to the manager job, in terms of hasn't really changed the structure much. The way the team sets up in a back three, 2 wing backs, 2 midfielders, a 10, 2 wingers, and one single striker is basically what they've done for the past 3-4 years. So he's kept it consistent, which is probably in part the reason why he's only lost 1 game, and they have played to the strengths of the squad rather than him trying to implement a new system with only a handful of games prior to the debut at the World Cup. So he's been sensible, and he's done fairly well with that approach.
Sounds good. Let's get into maybe players. So Kuzanov, who you mentioned at Man City, I remember last season when he first came, people were like, I'm not sure about this guy. But obviously he's very young. So what moment do you think he's in to perform? Maybe project him going forward.
I think he's probably one of the players that kind of has been punished through sort of narratives that you see in football, where he has kind of a high profile debut, which doesn't go initially great. But even within the rest of that game, he was fairly good after that first 10 minutes. But that kind of stigma's like followed him. So even though he's won 3 Man City Player of the Months since that debut. I think they've conceded, for example, like 1 goal in the past like 5 games. His clean sheet record is very, very impressive. For the games he's played, he's nearly the centre back of Man City with the most appearances this year. So he's been very, very good. But that sort of stigma still follows him around, where people still mention that
first impressions,
that debut. He is the best player within Uzbekistan. It's clear there's the level above, but he doesn't seem fazed by that. He always comes across as a very sort of humble player, but who is determined to do well. And I think his strengths will benefit the rest of the players around him, just by knowing that there's a player who's used to that level of competition, who's used to playing against players of that caliber and does well for it, will potentially allow other players who are not used to that to not be fazed by the situation that they're in.
Do you think it's good having your best player as a defender in in a tournament competition like this, or would you rather have like a winger, striker, central midfielder rather than a center back as such?
I honestly think it's not as bad as people think, because when you see teams, I always remember like Gabon with Aubameyang. You can see those sorts of teams tend to just pass to him, and then hopefully he can make something out of it. Whereas with your best player being a centre back, the onus has to then be on the attackers to do something. He's not even a goal scoring centre back, so he's not going to get you a goal from a header or from a corner. So they need to do something. So if anything, I think it takes the pressure off both him and them, by basically people are not going to assume that it's going to be a Kusanov hat trick, the reason they win a game. But he can be there to bail them out if they do go forward trying to create something.
Cool. What other players do you think are in good shape for this tournament? Like the others, so to speak, that we may not know about.
There's a few who sort of people who follow football potentially more outside of sort of the big leagues may be aware. So there's Eldar Shomorodov, who is on loan at Istanbul here from Roma. He's got 20 goals, 4 assists on the Turkish top flight this year. So he's amongst their top scorers in that league. So he's doing really well. There's Austin Uranov, who plays for Persepolis in Iran. He's suffered with injuries, but when he's on form, he's very good, very creative, really good at dribbling, very creative. Can sometimes be a bit of a gets kind of blinkered and focuses on himself, and then doesn't make the final pass that would create a goal. But when Uzbekistan played Egypt, for example, he was on a pitch with Mohamed Salah, and he looked the better player. He was that impressive that day. So they do have some. They have a diminutive winger called Fazuliev, who plays for here as well. He's very, very. He's only like 5'6" or something like that. He's tiny, but he's very good. And they have reasonably solid defensive midfielders as well. So they have a structure of a good team. It's clear that Eldor Shomorodov and Husanov are above everyone else in terms of if they get a goal, it'll probably be Eldor Shomorodov who gets it.
Is there anyone you've earmarked maybe in like the under 21, under 23 bracket that you think like on this particular stage of the World Cup, if they play well, they're going to be in a big team soon?
Potentially. They're slightly above under 21s, but Uranov is only in his early 20s. There is a centre-back who was the youth centre-back partner to Husanov in the sort of youth teams. He's kind of broken into the national team recently, and he looks really promising. Urazov. There's Karimov, who is a right back. Again, looks really good, but I think he'll be a squad option. Their team is made up of players kind of in their 23s to 26s. So there's potentially not going to be a golden little gem. I think that'll be the next World Cup. There'll be a few very promising 16, 17-year-olds who are around just now who'll be in that squad and who will be the ones who kind of push on.
Cool. So let's talk floor. Let's talk ceiling. In other words, how bad can it be? How good can it be?
I think the option for the floor is fairly low in terms of if they went into every game and they were competitive in every game and they lost every game, that would obviously not be ideal. But as long as they show up and they try and they look competitive, the fear is like a North Korea against Portugal style absolute annihilation. I don't think that will happen, but that's the fear, and that will be kind of the worst case situation. They are obviously in a very hard group with Portugal, Colombia, and DR Congo, so there's not an easy kind of, well, that's at 3 points. I'd be if they can get anything out of Portugal and Colombia, that'd be great. I have a feeling that it'll be potentially 2 losses, and then they'll get to DR Congo, and it'll be must win. And it'll probably be must win for both teams. If they come third, chances are they'll play Croatia or England, I believe, in the knockout round. So I think potentially that's where the tournament ends, if I'm being honest. Fairy tale is an Eldor Shomorodov winner that knocks England out of the World Cup. That would be my dream. But if that doesn't happen, just being there is kind of an achievement in itself. So just being competitive is kind of the aim and the expectations I have personally.
Cool. I got 2 more questions for you. Who's going to win the World Cup, Connor?
It's good. I don't want to say anybody but England, but anybody but England. I think it'll be Spain or France.
Okay. And the last question, is there anything I haven't asked about Uzbekistan, Uzbek football culture that you find particularly fun, interesting, novel that you think people should know or might want to know?
I would say that it's the Uzbek football fans are a lot more passionate than I think people think. and it's worth being aware, particularly if you're one of those people that likes to kind of be seen to know things about football. It's a nation that's up and coming, and will be getting closer to being a Japan Korea style presence in terms of consistently in international tournaments, but also with their players at club level. I think there will be more Uzbeks on the scene outside of Husanov at Mansei in the next 4 or 5 years. So it's just a country to pay attention to.
Cool. Where can people find you again?
At underscore Uzbek football on Twitter.
That link will be in the description. Connor, I thank you for taking the time to do this, man.
Thank you.